Hi, I'm Jay Burney, and welcome to our show about World Migratory Bird Day, migrating birds. The show is about how birds help connect our world and help connect us to our world. We're going to be talking about why birds are important and how they connect us. We're going to talk about what we can do to help birds. The Earth is in an ecological crisis, and that affects birds. Bird populations are crashing. Since 1970, there's been an overall population decline in birds of 2.9 billion birds. That's in a 50-year period. Causes include habitat loss, climate change, and the use of pesticides. And so welcome to the Birds of the Niagara World Migratory Bird Day Roundtable. Tonight we're visiting with some very special guests. Marcus Roston of the Buffalo Niagara Waterkeeper, J. Jean Rose Burney of the West New York Land Conservancy, Tom Kerr of the Buffalo Audubon Society, and Marcy Jacqueline, who represents a variety of Canadian nature clubs, including the Burt Miller Nature Club, and who was a great international partner for us during the Birds on Niagara celebration, as all of our guests were. Hey, everybody, and thank you for joining us on this very important World Migratory Bird Day Roundtable that we're doing. I've already introduced you and welcome. So I just want to throw the first question out there is, why are birds important? And does anybody want to grab the answer first? Well, let me start with Tom Kerr then. Tom, why are birds important?
That is the toughest question I get asked.
I figure you get asked it often.
And they're important for a lot of reasons. I do. They're important for a lot of reasons. They're pollinators. They control insect populations. They make our lives better. I'd rather have a backyard with birds in it than, a garage full of sports cars and all sorts of other fancy stuff. They're inspiring. They can fly. They can go wherever they want, which makes me makes me jealous these days. But they're important for a lot of reasons, and but I always tell people they're important just because they're there and they're alive and they're part of this world. They don't need to justify their existence. It's something I say a lot. You know, they have every right to be on this planet, the same rights we do, and it's sometimes it falls on us to make sure that they're going to stay here with us.
I'm going to ask each of you this question, and so each of you better be prepared with an answer. I'm going to go to Marcus next. Marcus, I'm going to you next because you're probably the most famous of us bird watchers today, since you were profiled in the Buffalo News yesterday. Congratulations. Why do you think birds are important?
Thank you. I think birds are important because they are one thing that connects all of us. No matter where you are, birds live around you. We all have different types, kinds of birds, different species of birds that live around us, but it's one thing that no matter where you're living, if you're out in the rural countryside, whether you're in the middle of a city, chances are there's a bird that's outside of your window, outside of your door, that's out there calling. And it's one thing that can unite all of us. Once you start to know birds and you start to talk about them, you could talk about them to other people. They start linking people together, as in, the birding community and bird community in Western New York is a great one and a strong one. And, it's great to be a part of the community, and birds just allow that connection between people, habitats from up here in the Lake Erie, Niagara River watershed, all the way to South America. We make connections, and those birds help us do that.
That's a very nice answer. Marcy, I'm going to go to you next.
Well, I think birds are really important because they're part of the ecological web. So and that web connects us to all living things, and every piece of it is very important for people to survive and thrive on the planet. But more than that, I think Marcus referred to this. There's a connection that I feel through nature and bird watching that I think is really part of our core being. And I've done some studies with some senior citizens, and their connection to nature sometimes is more important to them than even their connection with people. And I think that is because it's part of our core nature to be part of nature. And birds for me are a big part of that, because I learn every day, and I get out into different habitats, and every day is a new day, and I just really enjoy it, and I think it's great for our well-being.
Jay Jean, you want to take a crack at it? Why are birds important?
Sure. Birds are important. Well, for one, they help keep ecosystems healthy for all sorts of reasons. Pollination, seed dispersal, genetic diversity, and healthy ecosystems keep us alive. Clean our water, clean our air. So there's that just sort of like utilitarian value. But for me, mostly it's just that birds bring joy to people's lives. It's fun to go watch birds. It's fun to do that with your family. It's fun to travel. It's, this incredible community, I think Marcus mentioned, of bird watchers, and, people who have feeders in their backyards, and people who post photos online on Facebook. It's just something that, it connects people. It gives people, something to do, especially, right now with everything that's going on with most things being closed. You can't go to a baseball game. You can't go to a movie. You can't go to a restaurant. A lot of us can't go to work. Um, Bird watching, being outside in nature in general, but bird watching in particular is giving something to people, some sort of meaning and value, and something to do just at the basic level right now when we all need something like that.
So we're all kind of touching on this. We've talked about it. How do birds connect us? I mean, emotionally, we have a connection to nature, to each other, and we can share experiences with birds. But migratory birds literally, physically connect us to different parts of the hemisphere and the globe. Let's talk about that a little bit. We have a globally significant, important bird area here, the Niagara River corridor. Part of that is because of the migratory birds that come through here. This morning, I talked with Twan Leenders, who's with the Roger Tory Peterson Institute of Natural History. We talked a lot about the connections between Buffalo, Western New York, and Costa Rica, where he does a lot of his work. Let's talk a little bit about that. What kind of birds do we have here that connect us to other parts of the world, and where do they go to?
You talk about the winter gulls. The Bonaparte's gull comes through here in the fall, winter, and spring, and they nest up in boreal forests. They nest in trees in Alaska and northern Canada, and come down here, pass through the Niagara River, go to the Atlantic Ocean, during the winter, and then go back up north during the summer. So there's that sort of crazy life story of this gull that, a lot of people think of gulls as that one bird that eats hamburgers in the Burger King parking lot. But, there's this incredible diversity of species and behaviors, and, just trying to imagine a gull in a pine tree up in up in Alaska nesting. My wife is from Puerto Rico, and in Puerto Rico in the winter you get migratory warblers, these little colorful songbirds that nest up here or further north or in the Appalachians. And they go down south sometimes to the southern U.S. or the Caribbean or Mexico or Central America or South America, and they pass through Puerto Rico. And these cool nature preserves and forests in Puerto Rico, the same bird that northern parula or northern water thrush. I'll go down and visit her family in December, and I'll see the same birds that I saw 3 months earlier in September, and the same birds that I'm going to see 3 months later in May. It's the same birds. I'm not necessarily sure I'm seeing the same exact northern parula, but I might be, because it's the same species, and it's so that just connects these places all over the world with the exact same birds that need all of these places along that entire migratory route in order for them to survive and come back the next year.
Tom, I know you've worked with a lot of different species. You've done a lot of projects. I know you worked with the piping plover. Can you tell us a little bit about how important the piping plover is, and what the migratory connections are to Western New York, even with that bird?
Well, three different populations of piping plovers. There's the Atlantic population, which would nest Massachusetts, Long Island, Maine, and that's what I worked with when I worked in New York City. We did an endangered species nesting site, and so those would go down to the Gulf Coast, in the Bahamas, Florida, and you know, it takes a whole when you're trying to protect a species. It takes often more than just we're able to give them. So we can protect their nesting site, but we need work with other organizations and countries and people from around the world to help protect these birds. So they would leave our site and we wouldn't see them again for, 8 months. And they'd come back. Some of them were banded and tagged, so we would have an idea where they went. And they would come back every year to like the same, 100 square of beach, which was amazing. I really think that's the most amazing part of birds is how you can see them and they can disappear and be gone for months and come back to the same spot. And you have no idea what happened to them. You just what they've been through. Where did they go? What did they do while they were there? Like, who saw them? Have I seen that bird? I've been in those places. Did I see that bird again down there? At Beaver Meadow, we do a bird banding project for, it's called MAPS, Monitoring Avian Productivity and Survivorship. And we have, this past summer, we recaptured a yellow warbler that we banded 3 or 4 years earlier. That when we banded him, he was around 2 or 3 years old. So now we have this 6-7-year-old warbler that's flown who knows how far in its lifetime, and it's been at Beaver Meadow every summer since. And it just comes back and goes and nests there, and then leaves, goes thousands of miles, and comes back and finds its way. So,
well, we have so many amazing stories, different species of birds. Everybody knows about the little hummingbird, the ruby-throated hummingbird. What an amazing story this little tiny bird has. It migrates from this area and north of this area across the Gulf of Mexico, sometimes just on a straight 8-hour trip through storms, and it comes back. These are amazingly resilient animals, and all along the way, they run into hazards. Marcus, I know that you have just the other day saw a prothonotary warbler in Western New York. What was that like?
It was super exciting to be walking in the creek and then to see that flash of yellow. And of course, you default to what are the common species that are going to be there, like yellow warbler, and you try to tamp down those expectations when you first see it, but then you pull your binoculars up and you get your eyes on it, and it was great to see that vivid yellow. You suddenly see those gray wings contrast with its body. And it felt like a spark inside of like, oh man, I found the rare bird. And it's always super cool to be able to, ring the alert bell and to let everybody know. And like you said, to think about what those warblers have gone through. And also how lucky we are to, see them in Western New York, being so high on or so north on their, general range. We don't have prothonotary warblers that show up around here in Erie County too often, or visit, Buffalo Creek. So to be able to run into one completely unexpectedly, it was awesome. And like you said, you think about what that bird has been experiencing on its journey from Central America, South America, traveling all the way up here to Western New York just to try and find a hollow hole in a tree to hang out in one of our swamps. And it's just super cool to be able to get out there and see how bright those birds are. Yeah, it was a great feeling this weekend, and I feel like that's what spring is this migration brings in new birds and new experiences every day. It's always exciting to get out there and see what's new, what came in, and what's going to be different today.
Marcus, I know you saw that at the Oxbow on the Buffalo River, which is a place that was protected by, among other groups, your organization, Buffalo Waterkeeper. Margaret Wooster was doing that project. So what a great opportunity to actually go to a place that you guys protected to see that really interesting bird. Marcy, I'm going to ask you about shorebirds. You told me an interesting story the other day. You said that because of the pandemic, people aren't going out and walking their dogs along the shoreline, and you're seeing more shorebirds that you used to see there. What's that all about? Let's talk about that a little bit. I don't want to put you on the spot about shorebirds, but they migrate. They migrate through here. This is a very important area.
Yeah, and we don't have, because of the high lake levels, we've been losing a lot of habitat on the Canadian side of Lake Erie, and so what we're seeing recently is that a lot of our friends from the U.S. Are unable to come to their summer residence, and so there's fewer people on the beach, and there's actually a bit more activity than there's been in many years now. So and also the habitat isn't being destroyed as much because it's not attractive, and people want the beachfront. So it's got some positives as well. Yeah, and again, it's a remarkable story. It's really interesting to be in South America. I've been lucky enough to go to South America 6 times, and to see these shorebirds down there as well as other migrants, and then think about that they've got to come all this way back up here and survive and find food and rest as well. So these lake shoreline habitats are really critical for them to feed and rest before they continue their journey to the nesting sites.
We're a little more than halfway through our program, and this leads me into talking about what kinds of things we can do here to better conserve birds, to better protect birds. This is a great time to be thinking about that, and not only because we have the time, but because it's critical. We're losing the battle. Birds are in an incredible decline worldwide. What kinds of projects can we do? What kinds of things can we think about and actually do here? What do we need to do? Anybody can grab this one.
I can start because I'm involved in trying to save a property. I think we have to be mobilize more. So I think we have to join forces and be more powerful that way. And we need to let politicians know our concerns, and we need to vote for the right people that will listen to us. So as well as educating people, I think education and awareness is key. And the more people that understand the importance of birds as well as everything else in our environment, that it will be a more powerful tool for us to try and make the environment one of the key issues, as it should be for at any level of government, but also in our daily lives.
You're involved with Waverly Woods, Fort Erie Beach, and we have some information about that on our website. So if you want to see it, we'll put up a link, you can see it. We're all doing things. What else are you folks doing?
Well, like she said, I think that education is extremely crucial to open everyone's eyes to realize how unique and how special of an area that we live in, that we don't just have seagulls flying around. We have a great diversity of gulls that are here. We just don't have, little brown birds that are out there. We have a great diversity of sparrows. But unless people are educated and are taught to be able to learn how to appreciate it, we don't appreciate it as much as we should. And when we aren't putting those interests in the right place and thinking about our environment with most of the actions that we take, then suddenly we kind of forget about the birds and we forget about our surrounding plants and animals that are helping us sustain our system and sustain the ecosystems around us. So it's the education part, and then it's also thinking on a small scale, or trying to act on your own small scale to be able to help these birds. Like we said, they're migrating from far distances, but they need all of that space in between the beginning of their journey and the end of their journey. And sometimes that space could be my backyard in the city of Tonawanda. So if I can do everything in my power to make my little space here as bird friendly as possible, by trying to plant native plants and leaving my leaves out and leaving dead plants out, letting things be a little bit messier to attract more insects, to be able to sustain more birds, we can all do our small little part to help these populations survive.
Tom, I know the Buffalo Audubon Society has done a lot for years, and I know that right now, while we're all basically indoors, you're doing some web programs, and you've done one on migrating birds, beginning birding. What's going on?
Well, our preserves are still open. So there's Beaver Meadow. We have 8 miles of trails, and it's actually one of the best spots for birding in Western New York. And it's a little bit of a ways out. It's going to be about 45 minutes for most people to an hour. But there's really good habitat diversity there. We have, meadows, we have a pond, we have wetlands, we have old growth forest, we have, more brushy forest. So we do get a lot of different species there. We have the North Tonawanda Audubon Preserve in North Tonawanda. We have Rose Acres not too far from Beaver Meadow. So we are still open as our preserves are open, and we're still, running those preserves. So one thing I've been telling people in these webinars, if you're going to go bird watching, where you go bird watching, it's really important that you support where you look for birds. So if you're bird watching at Tift needs help. If you're bird watching at Rhinestein needs help. If you're bird watching at Beaver Meadow or any of our Audubon preserves, we need help. Times Beach. These places are all still open and still doing what we can, but we're losing a lot of revenue from programs that we're not able to deliver right now. So one thing you can do to help birds is help out the places where you bird watch. If you're going to go to the Oxbow, support Buffalo Niagara Waterkeeper. They've done a huge restoration project there. They had Buffalo Audubon involved in that. I knew that one day we were going to find prothonotary warblers, so it was so great that Marcus found that there. But if you're going to go bird watching, and do what you can to support the organizations that make that possible. You can go bird watching in your backyard, and little habitats like backyards add up, and they're very important. If you consider the area that those habitats cover, like backyards and schoolyards and places like that we don't think is habitat for birds, we can change those to habitat for birds. It doesn't even take that much. Just putting up some birdhouses, let us grow in areas where we weren't letting it grow before, can create habitat. So, we're still trying to do everything we can at Buffalo Audubon. We're still working. We're still advocating for birds. And
Tom, I know you're doing the online stuff also, and we'll have that on our website. People can go and see the ones you've produced. I also know you're doing a big bird day, and you're looking for donations to contribute to that. You can find that link on our website and on the Buffalo Audubon Society website and Facebook page. And we will have links to all these organizations up so you can contribute, because we do need your help. I kind of want to end the roundtable conversation with Jay Jean. I want to talk about the Western New York Land Conservancy. You're kind of the new kid on the block in terms of organizations. You've been around about 10 years, really active. What's going on? What kind of conservation projects are you doing?
Well, we do a lot of land protection and habitat restoration. You've probably maybe gone to the Stella Niagara Preserve in Lewiston. It's a nature reserve right on that Niagara River. I was there just last weekend and had a male orchard oriole. So hopefully they nest there. They have in the past. That's a neat place. It's got trails, a kayak launch. So we protect a lot of open spaces around Western New York, a lot of wildlife habitat. I think you talk about, like, how do you conserve birds, and it begins with simple things to keep your cats inside, restore your backyard, plant native plants, support organizations that protect birds and do conservation. But I think for people just in general to sort of want to protect birds, to fall in love with birds, they have to experience them. We're all talking about our own experiences with birds, and I think that's where our why we all do what we do, in terms of conservation or education, is because we just have fallen in love with these things ourselves, with birds, with nature. And it starts with me, and I think for most people, with places you can go to experience nature and birds. I basically grew up at Beaver Meadow. Times Beach in Buffalo on the waterfront is my favorite place to go right now. And the Land Conservancy is always trying to protect places like that and create trails, and let people experience these things so that they can fall in love with them, so that they can then maybe professionally, or maybe just with their own free time, try to protect these places, do conservation. And right now the Land Conservancy is trying to buy a really important property called the College Lodge Forest in Fredonia. This is a 168 acre old growth forest with a beautiful large wetland. And it's right on they call it the Portage Escarpment, which is the ridge overlooking Lake Erie. So it's like the continental divide between the Great Lakes and the Mississippi. If it rains on one part of this property, it drains into the Lake Erie and the Niagara River, and ultimately the Atlantic Ocean. It rains on another side of this property, it goes to the Allegheny River, the Mississippi River, the Gulf of Mexico. So that's pretty cool. But it's also a really important migratory pathway for birds along the lake. As songbirds and hawks, start coming through, and waterfowl come through in the spring and fall, pass through here. Really interesting diversity of birds nest here too. You get birds that are more northern boreal species nesting there, as well as birds that are more southern. You get Louisiana water thrush and northern water thrush nest at this property. It's just an example of this sort of weird mix of northern and southern species. And so we're trying to buy this land and keep it open as a nature preserve with trails. And so that's what the Land Conservancy does, and that's I think one way that people can help is donate to us and Audubon and Prism and Waterkeeper, and support campaigns to save land in Fort Erie. That's just get involved and help and become part of those projects.
We're all doing great work. It's really an honor for me to know all of you, and I just appreciate the work we're doing. One little caveat: Times Beach is only partially open. We've had some major damage there. Part of the preserve is closed because of damage, but some of it's still open. There's still some good birding there. Listen, thank you all so much. You want to add anything? We've got about 2 minutes, and then we're going to close it up. And so go to the Birds on Niagara website, and we're going to have another festival this year. It'll be our third festival, international. And we're glad to keep people connected through these kinds of conversations, through birding. You go out there and you can bird now. Remember to self-isolate. And thanks for joining us today, and thanks to our guests. We'll see you all again soon.
Thanks.
Yeah,
all right.
Thanks, Jay.
You're on mute, Dad.
Jay, you're muted.
I'm muted myself. I'm sorry.